When I think about place, I think the place that I live right now, being in Montana, and all that that offers, which is vast. And I grew up in Southern California and then came to Montana in the 90s. And it was a huge shift to be able to live in a place with few people, where you didn't have traffic, where every morning you could wake up and look at the mountains or look at the lake or experience a walk in the woods. There's certainly enough inspiration for a painter or a photographer or an artist or a writer or just somebody that wants to get out of their own head and get nature into the world. That's all possible in Montana.
Place is important to my life in general. In the work I've been doing for almost the last decade, because I live in the far north of Norway, the 69th latitude. It is a world stripped bare in many respects. It is a world of rock and sea and a lot of gray. In a way, there's no place to hide in that world. And I mean that metaphorically. You're exposed. And I think there's something in that landscape that makes the articulation of that more possible. It's happened to me twice. Once, the first time, is when I moved to Moab, Utah as a boy. So I was about 6th grade. Moab was a desolate place then. The important thing to this conversation is the desert was wide open. The desert and the canyons. And so for a little boy coming from southeast Texas, and basically a suburban kind of life in southeast Texas, to those great deserts, a world opens, a world of possibility. The second time I think it really happened is when I went to the far north of Norway. In both places, in the Moab of my youth and in my present life in northern Norway, I exist on an edge. I exist on a kind of edge where is it even possible for people to live? Hello, Tabby. I came across your work via Radius Gallery. I would enjoy following your work on Facebook and promote your work on my own homepage. I am a writer. I tend to use Facebook as a way to promote a variety of writers and artists and do so without agenda. I simply appreciate your generous paintings. Damon. And I happened to see a cycle of images that a gallery, Radius Gallery, in Missoula, Montana. And I was seeing this cycle of images with a lot of different painters on Facebook. And I noticed I kept coming back to the same images. After seeing these, I went to the Radius Gallery website trying to figure out who had done these paintings, and it ends up being this Tabby Ivy person.
I didn't have a clue about Damon. He didn't have a clue about me. My first contact with him came through a message on Facebook. And he had seen some paintings of mine on a Facebook posting by Radius Gallery in Missoula. I had a show there. And so I answered his message and we connected. Hello, Damon. I'm so very honored that you would want to connect. And I would love to know more about you, your writing and where you live. Thank you so very much for your kind words about my art. As you can appreciate, artists often live within themselves, thinking, envisioning, then creating and sending our work out into the world. But when it touches someone, or a connection is made, that is a beautiful thing. Thank you for honoring my work with your interest and making the effort to reach out to me. Tabby.
I remain a believer in a solitary engagement of art, when, like reading, we unexpectedly realize our freer selves. In such a moment of looking, the distance between ourselves and what we see diminishes. My story's pretty typical, I would guess. I grew up in a family of storytellers, particularly my dad. My dad's, to this day, is quite a storyteller. And then reading. I don't know that I've ever heard a writer talk about writing without talking about reading. And I just started reading young. I started reading Wind in the Willows, Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer. I don't think I gave much thought to being a writer, except that I enjoyed reading so much. And eventually you put a few words down, and if you're lucky, somebody tells you they're pretty good words. And at some point along the way, you start to take it serious. And that means you wake up, you write, you correct it, you hold your work up against what you like, see where you are, you write better, you read better, and eventually you start sending out work. I don't think one ever gets out of the process of holding one's own work up against what you think is best. And that's not easy. Somebody who wants to write well. It's good to go back and read Faulkner's Nobel Prize speech, in which basically what he says is that all good writing is the human heart in conflict with itself. I will say, as I've gotten older, I've turned most of my attention to writing projects, whether I'm writing a film or writing a longer work or writing a play. I think at this point in my life that the work has become a kind of fulfillment, the actual process of it.
So I realized I was not a realist when it came to painting. I didn't want to depict things. I wanted to convey things. And that's what's exciting for me now, is the art that's coming out is coming from a deeper place within me. I don't think I ever said, I want to be an artist. I think probably what happened was, I'm curious about doing photography, and I always loved black and white photography. And I read in the paper one day that Rocky Mountain School of Photography was doing a summer intensive program in Missoula. So I signed up and did a 3-month program with a course. And it allowed me to focus for the first time on that creative side of my brain. And I loved it, and it was wonderful. And then a friend said, I'm going to take a drawing course at the college. Would you like to do it? Yeah, well, great. So I took the drawing class, and that led to a painting class. And that led to a couple workshops with painting. A friend told me once, you paint in watercolors like you're painting in oils. So I thought, oh, well, okay, let's try oils then. So it just one thing led to another, And as I learned the medium and learned what worked and didn't, and how to gray down tones and how to put value into a painting, but my voice started coming out, and I could appreciate that it was saying something a bit more truthful than when I first started painting. I was just trying to paint the scene in front of me. We didn't really correspond too much for several months, other than pleasantries, liking things that he would post or I would post. And then he posted something about a play of his was going to be performed in Spokane in September of 2019. And so I told my husband, Bob, we need to go over and see this play. I really want to see this play. And so we did. And I was just blown away with it was a very simple production, one actor, narrator, and a woman violinist. And it was basically a long poem and it was about an hour long. It was just beautiful. And so I came back from that and wrote something on Facebook about the experience, how wonderful it was. And I had a show opening at Frame of Reference Fine Art in Whitefish. Damon knew that I had this upcoming show. And so one day I get an email from him, and it's this beautiful essay that he had written.
And gently the river flows. The river ebbs through a world colored by autumn. The willows, or maybe they are cottonwoods, have, like the sky, turned golden. Across the river from these trees is a rise of conifers, inviting our eyes to gaze upriver and to see the distant line of the horizon. There we can either stop or go further. For all that begs me to stop in this painting, it is the silence of the work that keeps me. They are real, these places within the painting and the silence they echo. They are as real as the painting, the painter, and the person looking. I will venture to guess that when you look at a landscape, you're looking for a sort of transient way into that space, which is to say, apprehending how the transient might touch you. Of course, this is only speculation on my part.
I paint very intuitively, choosing a scene that depicts a feeling or mood that touches me. Transiency is something I have not thought about. Thanks for giving me something to contemplate.
I believe over time that the practice of art, for me, has become one of recognizing and accepting grace. We must use our attention to look, to see. Wherever we stop, there will be grace.
When I first met Damon, I was intrigued by his writing, and I really appreciated the style he had and the way he wrote. So I wanted to read everything that I could that he had written. One of the books he had done was a collaboration with a photographer, and he had written some poem-type things to go with her photographs. And I thought, wow, he's done a collaboration before with someone. Would he be interested in doing something with me? And around this time, the Hockaday Museum asked me if I'd do a show in summer of 2022. But I suggested to them, how about including this writer that I've connected with in Norway? And they thought it was a great idea. And I mentioned it to Damon, and he thought it was a great idea. And so we just, that's how it all started. The actual relationship between he and I was just purely by chance through Facebook, because the man lives in the far north of Norway. And interestingly, him being in Norway and me being in Montana and in Big Fork, and almost 4,000 miles separates the two places, as well as an 8-hour time change. With that distance also allowed an intimacy in our work, because there was like a safe barrier there.
The thing that comes most immediately to mind is the work becomes the focus and not the person. Collaboration is about trust, period. You have to trust each other. You have the freedom to critique each other. If we began this collaboration and I'd been, closer than the 8,000 kilometers or whatever that I am, probably something of the her, or of the me, for that matter, would have affected the project more, because it would have taken some attention naturally off of the work. The distance reinforced the work.
We worked on this collaboration for about 2 solid years. And I can see a change in my work within that period of time. Some of the paintings I did early on are very different than some of the paintings that happened later in the process.
When I first started writing essays for these pieces, I found myself having a relationship with the paintings. They were day to day in my ordinary life. My ordinary life of going to check the mail. My ordinary life of taking a walk each day in the little hill behind my house. I believe each collaborative partner has to be willing to give something up to the project. In other words, if I could maybe write a particularly good paragraph about some element of a work, but if it's outside the project, outside of how the essays are operating with the paintings, speaking to each other, then it has to go. That's how strong work is made. Crumbling into ruins of bindweed grown up through slats of rotted timber, chipped and dismantled by the long harvest of families who could never stay here. The curtains rent, bed irons overturned in the crosshairs of paneless windows, and the screen door remarkably intact and just parted, for us to see the knob missing, the door shut, we guessed, for years. For those of us who carry it, despair cannot be understood through a sequence of causations. Notice I do not use the word depression. Depression is something else. We can look another direction while in despair, but people who suffer from depression cannot do the same. I wrote to Tabby about this, and she shared a point of view I appreciate. She wrote, "Do we give in to it, give up, be afraid, or choose an action? Or do we reach deep inside and fight for a way out and beyond the crippling moment to find hope once again?" Those are the questions, and I recognize from her tone what Tabby advises. The fact that the world knows when we are in a moment of despair is part of what gets to me. A sense of being terminal storms forward. It is here. It is in our face. I cannot let go of wanting returns, in spite of knowing that a lifetime can vanish in seeking them. We should be aware of what we seek in our returns. If we seek to repeat what has happened, then we will fail. There is too much I in such seeking, but if we seek a place, a sacred place, or the place where we pick berries, then we should seek that place until we vanish, until the I vanishes. Then the place and what more is there will do the rest.